earth, fire, air, water. Elements all different and unique from one another, yet there was always a need for a balance between them all. Earth complemented air as much as fire supplemented water. Without their halves, the elements and the world at large would be thrown into chaos, out of balance. Only the Avatar can master all four elements and maintain the balance of the world. For hundreds of years, the Avatars were the mediators between all the nations, the bridge between the physical and the spiritual worlds. 12 years before the Great Airbender genocide, Avatar Roku met his demise on his home island. Moments later, he was reincarnated into Avatar Aang of the Air Nomads. Aang became a powerful airbender, mastering the element at the age of 12. But once the monks told him of his avatar status, he became overwhelmed, running away from the responsibility. The young avatar was caught in a storm, encased in ice. After a century, he was discovered by Katara and Sokka of the Southern Water Tribe. They helped re-assimilate Aang into the new, war-torn world. The Fire Nation was achieving world dominance. With the help of his friends, Aang defeated the Fire Nation and the Phoenix King, restoring balance to the world. After Aang's untimely death, he was reincarnated into Korra, the next Avatar. Born to the Southern Water Tribe, Korra was a natural in the physical aspects of the elements, bending water, fire, and earth at the age of 4. She became a great avatar, though she was a bit hot-headed, taking on Amon, the Equalist, Unalaq, the Dark Avatar, Zahir, the Anarchist, and Kuvira, the Conqueror. Though she was met with much strife with each of her adversaries, her will, determination, and resiliency were unmatched. The question still stands: who was the better avatar? Avatar Aang, the last airbender, or Avatar Korra, the legend? In this matchup, I will be comparing Aang and Korra as they appear at the end of their series. For Aang, this would be Book 3 of The Last Airbender. For Korra, this will be Book 4 of The Legend of Korra. Both will be fighting with no equipment, so Aang will be without his glider. At the age of 12, Aang's most notable physical attribute was his speed and agility. More often than not, he was evading the attacks of his foes, whether by way of jumps and leaps or body touch evasion. He was so light on his feet, even Toph could not pick him up with her sonar sight. However, he left a bit to be desired when it came to his strength and constitution. Aang does not get hit very often, but when he does, he usually is taken out of the fight, whether it be indefinite or momentarily. As noted by the White Lotus, the physical aspects of combat came natural to Korra. She was a tenacious fighter in both her speed and strength, fast enough to dodge enemy strikes, strong enough to tank them when she could not. Her reflexes were quite stellar, proficient in hand-to-hand martial arts. I believe this is attributed to her natural killer instinct. She had no quit in her. When tagged, she did not often stay down, willing herself to continue the fight. A physical bout between Aang and Korra would be a scrap between a light fighter and a medium-heavy fighter, respectively. Aang was extremely light on his feet, not often taking many hits. Korra was swift as well, but she certainly got hit more often. The disparity between the two came in their ability to take a hit. If Korra got a good hit on Aang, he would likely go down or be temporarily incapacitated. If Aang tagged Korra, she would likely brush it off and continue on. The thing is, it would be difficult for Korra to get a solid strike on Aang, and it would be tough for Aang to bring down Korra with a single hit. For me, I favor Korra's ability to take and dish out damage. I would give Korra the slight advantage for her physical abilities. As avatars, Aang and Korra could bend every element known to man. Because of this, I will break down each element in sections with separate verdicts. Earth was the element of substance, classified by its strength and straightforward nature. The bedrock of Earthbending was rooted around negative and positive Jing, the wisdom of knowing when to strike and when to evade. For Aang, Earth was the most difficult element to learn, as it was directly opposed to his style and personality. He was taught by the young prodigy Toph Beifong. Though she was blind, she could sense all movement around her through a sonar sense by way of the Earth. While difficult, in time, Aang adapted these methods. Despite the fact that Toph said his earthbending needed work, it served Aang well against Phoenix King Ozai. For Korra, she would be a natural talent with Earth. The principles of the style fell directly in line with her own personality. At the age of 16, she was already a master of the element, learning from earthbending masters under the guidance of the White Lotus. When she arrived in Republic City, she took up pro-bending, learning a much faster and loose style of earthbending. On top of that, she learned metal bending from Su Yin Beifong, Toph's daughter, which came in handy when she faced Kuvira. Both Aang and Korra have displayed comparable strength with their abilities, but Korra's knowledge of metal bending, coupled with her more versatile style, bodes well for her advantage. Aang didn't hold Toph's full confidence in his abilities, and he had difficulty contending with Azula in a head-on earthbending assault. Plus, Korra's personality was more well-suited to Earth. When comparing the two, Korra would seem to get the edge for her earthbending. Fire is the element of power, marked by its fierce energy and tenacious passion. The foundations of firebending were based around attack, drawing power from the sun and an individual's inner chi. Unlike Aang's initial discomfort with Earth, he was a natural talent with fire. However, his first use of firebending was overzealous, and he burned his best friend Katara. For a year, he swore never to use the element again, unable to contain its innate power. But when he met the last dragons with Zuko, he discovered that fire was not solely power, but life. While he was no firebending master by the end of his series, he finally had a grasp on the concepts of fire. Again, Korra was naturally gifted with fire. Like Earth, she mastered the element at the age of 16. The tenacity of the element came to her as easy as breathing. Not only was she capable of powerful, sustained fire blooms, but she was also very precise in her use. Firebending would often be her go-to element, even more so than her native water. It should be noted that firebenders were capable of producing lightning from their inner chi, but neither Aang nor Korra seem to have acquired the ability. However, we do know that Aang was able to redirect lightning, a useful tool, but irrelevant to this matchup. With all that said, it would seem that Korra gets the advantage with fire. Although Aang learned from the last dragons and Zuko, he only showcased moderate use of the element. Korra has far more experience and willingness to integrate firebending into her style, highlighting an earth stomp or water spout with a fire punch. For me, Korra gets the advantage as a firebender. Air is the element of freedom, defined by its spirituality and versatile dynamic. The basis of airbending came from the path of least resistance, favoring an almost exclusive defense. Obviously, being an air nomad for all his childhood, Aang would be a practiced bender of air. In fact, Aang was the youngest airbending master of the time, only 12 years old when he earned his mastery tattoos. Airbending was certainly Aang's go-to element, using it in all of his fights, almost exclusively. He could augment his physical speed with air, evading the strikes of his enemies. He was also quite creative with the element, creating air funnels and air scooters. To put it simply, Aang was the definitive airbending master of his time. Initially, Korra had a very hard time with airbending. The physical aspects of bending came easy to her, so elements like earth, fire, and water were a piece of cake. But the focus of spirituality within airbending was difficult for her to grasp. But once she reached her lowest point, her spiritual window was wide open. From then on, airbending came as easy to her as the other elements, integrating air as much as she did fire. With all that said, Aang would school Korra in the aspects of airbending. Even though Korra was more willing to utilize the element and was comfortable with its principles, she was also quite straightforward in its use. Aang used every angle of air, every gust, every nuance of wind. He was far more creative with the element and used the element for evasion and defense, unlike Korra, who often used it offensively in a straightforward manner. To no one's surprise, I side with Aang as the superior airbender. Water is the element of change, designated by its movement and adaptability. The premise of waterbending stood on the flow of energy, turning defense into attack in one fluid motion. Aang fell right in line with the teachings of waterbending. The aspects of airbending melded well with those of waterbending. It was easy for Aang to find the natural peace of water, feeling its ebb and flow. But he was not only malleable, he was also very powerful with his bending, creating water spouts and waves. Besides air, Aang was very comfortable with the use of water, integrating the element into his style as frequently as his primary element. As a citizen of the Southern Water Tribe, Korra was at home with water. Unlike Aang, she also held a skill with the healing properties of water. What is interesting about Korra is that we do not see her using water as much as one would expect. It is true that she used it exclusively during her short pro-bending career, but more often than not, she was without water, and in contrast to Katara or Unalaq, she did not carry water on her person. Believe it or not, I find this pair to be rather close with regards to their abilities with water. While Korra was born of water and a natural talent, Aang shared some of that natural ability. Aang also seemed to integrate waterbending into his style more so than Korra. However, when Korra did use her water, it was often to devastating effect. She could create massive water spouts from the depths of the ocean, and she could create multi-story tidal waves from the sewers of Republic City, repelling Kuvira's giant mech. While Aang was competent, even masterful with water, Korra simply had him beat. Korra gets the edge for her waterbending abilities. The Avatar state is effectively the element of balance. It is without dispute the strongest form of elemental bending, combining earth, fire, air, and water all in one. Not only was the Avatar state a boost to the elements, it has also provided a deeper connection to the energy of the spirit world. Roughly 10,000 years before the Airbender genocide, the Great Spirit of Light, Rava, fused with the first avatar, Wan, allowing him to live on in subsequent lifetimes. Whenever an avatar reaches this state, he or she could draw on their past lives, even taking the form of their past selves. When comparing the connection of the avatar state between Aang and Korra, there are a few things to go over. First, Aang is already at an advantage, as he has a connection to all his previous lives, while Korra was severed from hers during harmonic convergence. Even without Korra being severed, she never really had a deep connection with her avatar state. While she could enter the avatar state very easily, it was always superficial and never really potent. By comparison, Aang had difficulty submitting into the avatar state, but when he did, he was something to behold, mounting extraordinary strength and skill. It is worth noting that Korra does have more significant feats with energy bending, a specific aspect of the avatar state. She was able to repel the pure energy of Kuvira's mech, which held the power of something akin to an atomic bomb. But I am not sure that ability would be much use against Aang. Although Vatu, the ancient spirit of dark, might hit her with a pure energy beam, Aang has never displayed such an ability. With all that said, I believe Aang would have the ultimate advantage with the avatar state. Yes, he had an issue with entering the state, but when he did, his power was more impressive than Korra's own feats with the avatar state. Yes, Korra could go into the state much more quickly, but her connection to her past lives were severed, and her power was more primal than experienced. Raw, strong, and tenacious, but no match for the profound connection Aang had. Aang gets the edge for his avatar state. When assessing the overall bending abilities of these two characters, it really comes down to two categories: the physical elements and the avatar state. As noted, Korra was a natural prodigy of the physical aspects of being an avatar. Aside from the element of air, she had an inherent skill for bending, but she had very little touch with her spiritual side. Aang, in contradiction, was very in touch with his spirituality, but feared the power he possessed. For me, in an all-inclusive analysis, I do not see an edge for either opponent in the specific context. In other words, I would place my bet on Korra's innate bending abilities over Aang's, but I would not bet against Aang's avatar state against Korra's. For this, I see Aang and Korra as equals with regards to their bending abilities. As a strategist, Aang was quick and clever, only using violence as a necessary defense. At his core, he was a pacifist. Like a typical airbender, especially one so dedicated to traditional teachings, Aang was a dedicated defensive fighter. Aang's mode of operation was to outlast his foes rather than overwhelm them, biding his time until they slipped up or when he found an opening. Much like a waterbender, Aang's strength came from his counters and parries. He fought more with his wits and precision than he did with his brawn and power, looking for angles, looking for that path of least resistance. As a tactician, Korra was more intuitive than anything else. She did not necessarily go into a fight with a plan, falling back on her inherent skill, riding the coattails of her talent. Depending on her opponent, this could play to her benefit or detriment. For instance, this style was beneficial when taking an aggressive approach. This does not mean that she was single-minded in her offensive attack. As a native waterbender, she was quite capable of redirection. However, the worst example of this strategy lies in her first bout with Kuvira. Yes, Korra was hindered by poisonous metals laced in her body, but the fight highlighted the worst of her strategies. Though confident, she simply could not keep up with Kuvira's speed and counters. What's worse, she never altered her tactics, never thinking outside of the box to work within her limitations. Korra has more constitution than Aang, but that attribute would not come into play between the two of them. Aang outlasted his opponent when he could. His typical MO was designed specifically for someone like Korra. He would let her press an aggressive assault until he could pin her down. Korra simply reacted instead of controlling a fight, which does not foretell a fight against Aang playing to her favor. The issue lies in Aang's ability to tag Korra before she tags him. But with all things considered, I favor Aang. Avatar Aang gets the edge for his tactical abilities. A fight between Aang and Korra would be a beautiful dance, the graceful wind versus the tenacious wave. While Korra is a more dominating physical presence, Aang was more tactically sound, and when it came to their dedicated bending, they shared as many advantages as they did disadvantages. Let's set up this fight. Let's say it takes place on Air Temple Island, a lot of space, enough Earth, with lakes and an ocean. As a final tally, I would say the advantage to the victor goes 6-10. The following is a hypothetical battle of one majority victory. Obviously, Korra would be the aggressor in the fight, throwing out a rapid succession of fire jabs and kicks. Aang would easily evade, augmenting his twists and turns with his use of airbending. Korra does not alter her tactics, throwing out water whips, rubble, and fire at Aang. Her strikes are fast and accurate, but her attacks would be somewhat straightforward. Aang would narrowly dodge her attacks, leaping overhead or scooting away. Eventually, he would turn on Korra, looking for a unique angle to attack her from. With pinpoint precision, he would trip her up by the ankle or tag her with a gust of wind. Korra would fall back, flustered but unfazed. With a quick kip up, she would continue her attack. Though her tactics do not alter, she revs up her power, augmenting herself with the Avatar state. Her fire blooms would burn hotter. The boulder she levitated would hold more weight. Her gales would be powerful, and the water she called on would be massive. Aang would do all he could to keep up his perfect defensive posture, slicing through Korra's air currents, stonewalling her boulders, and extinguishing her fire, but it would be too much to handle. In one fluid motion, Korra would call up the oceans, crashing them down around Aang. In an instant, the water would turn to ice, trapping Aang inside. The boy Avatar would be defeated. But the last Airbender's tattoos would begin to glow. His eyes would open in a majestic blue. Korra's ice ball would begin to rumble and crack. Before long, shards of ice would splinter in all directions. Korra would be thrown back, and Aang would emerge in a fully realized Avatar state, encased in an elemental ball. Earth, fire, air, and water, all working in concert. At this point, all Korra would do is evade. Aang's Avatar state would be unrelenting, much unlike the boy himself. Korra would be able to hold him off with her own power, stonewalling his assaults, but eventually it would be too much. Korra would be overwhelmed and she would fall, defeated. And thus, I declare Avatar Aang the last Airbender, the ultimate victor. Of course, this is all just my opinion. Please leave your thoughts and comments below. Do you think that Korra could have won the majority? Or do you agree that Aang was the stronger avatar? Peace, love, and remember, be water, my friend. Mako would evade the simplistic attacks, casting the fire away, ducking and dodging the rest he could not. Once he felt comfortable with Zuko's attack patterns, do I like it? Do I not like it? Oh, I actually kind of like it. Oh my god, I like airbending a lot. Oh god, I like it.